Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into the work of retired clinical psychologist Dr. Lasater to tackle a really big question. How does something so simple, just seeking a little bit of relief, a small escape from stress, how does that spiral into a harmful, life-altering addiction?
So let's start with this really powerful idea that Dr. Lasater focuses on. Addictions represent misguided spiritual yearning. Now, what does that actually mean? Well, it suggests that at its very core, addiction isn't just about a drug or a behavior. It's really a search for something much deeper. Maybe a feeling of peace or euphoria or just connection with other people that's missing from our lives. The problem is that feeling always fades, and it often crashes into the exact opposite emotion.
The story of addiction actually begins with something that every single one of us does, every day. We all try to change how we feel to alter our state of consciousness. It's a totally fundamental part of being human.
And this slide, it really shows the whole spectrum of these escapes. On one side, you've got the subtle, pretty healthy stuff, like enjoying a great meal or just taking in a sunset. But on the other side, you have the more dramatic escapes, like drinking or gambling. And the more stressed out or distressed we are, the more likely we are to reach for those dramatic escapes to get a really immediate and powerful change.
Okay, so how does this thing we all do turn into a serious personal problem? Well, it all starts when we find an escape that just clicks, We find something that gives us a really positive, dramatic change, and we start to form this powerful, positive connection with it. Dr. Lasater says there are 3 key things that really kick this whole process off. First, you're feeling bad, anxious, lonely, depressed, whatever it is. Second, you stumble upon something that seems to fix it. And third, and this one is absolutely crucial, the immediate downsides just aren't bad enough to make you stop.
Let's take the case of Greg from Dr. Lasater's work. He felt super awkward and depressed, especially when he was around other people. But when he had a drink, bam, suddenly he felt confident, he felt funny. Alcohol became his go-to solution, his favorite escape. And the social approval he got from it completely hid any of the immediate negative effects.
All right, so let's look at how this starts to build into something way more serious. It's not like you just fall off a cliff. It's more of a gradual downward spiral that Dr. Lasater actually breaks down into 4 really distinct phases.
So it starts pretty innocently, right? With just discovering something that works. But then, problems start to creep in. And that leads to feeling shame and remorse, which, ironically, just makes you want to escape more. And finally, that escape just takes over everything. Let's walk through each of these phases with a real example.
So in phase 1, everything makes perfect sense. Danielle was terrified of being overweight like her parents, so running became her solution. It felt great, it fit her goals, and there were no immediate unacceptable downsides. She learned to really rely on it.
Then we hit phase 2, and this is where the solution starts to create brand new problems. Take Brent. He was using marijuana to get away from his anger towards his coach. But smoking didn't fix the coach issue. Instead, he started slacking on his schoolwork and fighting with his parents, which just piled more stress on top of the original problem.
In phase 3, the cycle becomes truly self-defeating. Angela would shop to feel less lonely, but she wound up deep in debt. Now, this went against her core value of being responsible with money, which caused this intense shame. And what did she do to escape that feeling of shame? You guessed it. She went on another shopping spree. This is that classic vicious cycle of addiction, where the escape is now the source of the pain.
Sooner or later, this downward spiral hits a crisis point. The place you always ran to for safety, your escape cafe, is about to be totally overwhelmed by the very problems you were trying to run away from.
And this is the real kicker, isn't it? The behavior that once felt like total freedom has now become a prison. The very thing you turn to for comfort is now the main source of your pain and suffering.
Wow, and this drawing, it just perfectly captures that moment. Just look at the people here. Every single one is completely lost in their chosen escape. Food, cigarettes, alcohol, sex. They're finding this little bit of comfort, totally unaware of that giant scary bear labeled reality that's looming right over their shoulder, ready to destroy the whole thing.
So this brings up a really important question. A lot of people seek escapes, so why do only some of us get trapped in this cycle? Well, like Dr. Lasater explains, addictions don't just strike at random. Some of us are simply more vulnerable. And your vulnerability can come from a bunch of different places. It could be unstable self-worth, where you just constantly feel like you're not good enough. Or it could be what he calls unfinished feelings, or traumas from your past that you're just trying to numb. It might be a family history of addiction. There can be a genetic part to it. Or it could just be these long-standing patterns of self-defeating behavior.
And this brings us right back to that idea of a misguided spiritual yearning. These vulnerabilities, they're what create that deep ache for peace or connection. The deeper that wound, the more intense the search for an escape, and the higher the risk of getting trapped.
At the end of the day, what this all really boils down to is a simple biological fact. Those intense, artificial highs that these escapes give you will always be followed by an equally intense crash. So the path to recovery is really about learning how to find contentment and real connection without riding that crazy roller coaster.
And that really leaves us with a final, really important thought to chew on. Maybe the key isn't just about stopping the escape, but about trying to understand it. Because by looking at how we choose to escape, we might just get a much clearer picture of what we're trying to escape from in the first place.